Hello again. This is Tina from Idaho, and today Nicole from Texas is joining me. Um, so I first discovered Emmett Fox through Chuck Chamberlain's talk, A New Pair of Glasses. It was a really long audio recording. And when Chuck recommended Fox's little booklet, The Golden Key, I went looking for it. And then I fell in love with Emmett Fox. And I include his writings in my morning meditations. So, just a reminder, in the early days of AA, members often went after meetings to hear Fox speak at Steinway Hall in New York. And even today, some groups still share his pamphlets alongside AA's literature. Old timers remember how widely Fox's writings were used for guidance. And Dr. Bob himself frequently recommended Fox's work along with Harry Drummond's The Greatest Thing in the World. Simple, simple, practical spiritual tools the fellowship relied on before AA had its own literature. Fox taught ideas that blended naturally with AA and was discovering change begins with changing our thoughts. Love and forgiveness are central to spiritual growth. Resentment has to be cleared away, and live one day at a time. Stay out of the past or the future. He emphasized that things are real, that thoughts are real things, and that you can't have one kind of mind and another kind of life. His focus on love, releasing resentment, and living in the present became woven into AA's earliest spiritual approach, shaping a path that millions in recovery still follow today. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to go through Emmet Fox's Good Shepherd, the Good Shepherd, a meditation on the 23rd Psalm. And I thought of this because I had a recent family gathering, and often when I have family gatherings, I fall back into obsession. And this prayer, this 23rd Psalm, I have memorized it. And when I can't get to sleep because I'm disturbed at night, I go through it in my head. And of course I've changed it in a way that works for me. and and I fall asleep now before I ever get to the end. It's um, a comforting prayer that I can substitute for my crazy thinking when I'm obsessing or can't turn it off. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read just the first little bit here, and then I'm going to stop and offer comments if anything comes up for me. And then I'm going to ask Nicole to do the same. And then she'll read the next section, and we'll go on like that until we get to the end. I hope it's helpful. Okay. The Good Shepherd, a meditation on the 23rd Psalm. Emmet Fox. The 23rd Psalm is a spiritual treatment in the form of a poem. You should read this meditation through several times, dwelling on each statement and endeavoring to realize the significance of what you're reading. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord means God, in particular, my own knowledge of truth, as that knowledge is the presence of God in me, my indwelling Christ. So for me, this is Tina speaking, I summarize that as love. And specifically, what I've learned in recovery, the actions of giving and contributing that my higher power guides me to bring. So that's what I equate to this presence of God or indwelling Christ. This is my shepherd. The shepherd takes care of his sheep, and the Lord will take care of me because I'm now seeking him through this meditation. I have only to realize sufficiently this truth that the Lord is my shepherd and every negative thing in my life will vanish away. So my comments on that are to me, a shepherd is a guide, a protector, a teacher, and maybe like a loving parent, you know? So I try to envision, and I actually got to be a loving parent. So I know what it's like to be a loving parent. I know that um, much like a shepherd, I don't, um, participate. I don't let my children guide me. When they were little and they wanted their way and they wanted all the candy they could consume, I didn't let that be the guide. I had an inner guide about parenting and being a shepherd, and that is what informed my parenting. And when they got older and they started to engage in behaviors that were bad for them, let's say they started partying or whatever, I had to learn that a shepherd, a good shepherd, a loving parent would allow them to suffer the consequences of their choices. A loving shepherd wouldn't, um, you know, prevent or try to stop a natural consequence from occurring. A loving parent would allow a natural consequence to occur. So when I'm trying to fall asleep and I'm having some difficulty because I'm obsessing about something, and usually when I'm obsessing about, I don't think these people like me. That's usually the obsession that recurs. Then I remember that I am to be shepherded, not by other people's desires for me or by other people's wants for me, not my fill in the blank, my mother or father, sister or brother would like me to behave like this. So that's not, so the loving shepherd is, I check in with my insides, not my outsides, to start behaving in ways that my insides, this loving shepherd, is guiding. So that's my comments on that. Nicole, do you have anything you'd like to offer?
Sure. Thanks, Tina. Yeah, I thought when I read this about step one and step two, and where it says on page, let's see, it says on page 45, lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. So this is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then on page 47, it says, do not let any prejudice you might have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. So I thought of those because when I saw this description of the Lord as my shepherd, and it says, I am now seeking him through this meditation, um, you know, and this terminology, some of us can get hung up on this terminology. Like I know that I do when I hear Christ and Lord, and automatically the gates of my imagination just come crashing down. Um, but then, they say that over half of the fellowship of the alcoholics who recovered were atheist or agnostic. And so really it's not about conforming to anyone else's idea of what this higher power is. And honestly, it's kind of small-minded to think that I even know what someone else's concept, even if this terminology speaks to them. Um, like that I don't know what that is for them either, but just all that it's the process of seeking, that's really the action that we're taking. We don't have to know what this higher power is. We don't have to be convinced that this higher power is going to work for us in our lives. In the beginning, all we need is a willingness and an openness, which might sound like, something like, what if I don't know everything that there is to know about everything? What if I don't know, what if it's possible that there is a higher power that might be able to solve my problems, and that's all we needed to get started? And so the seeking is taking this action to ask, what does this honestly mean for me? And my sponsor said I could replace, some of this spiritual terminology with love as well. And that was something I could identify with. I believe in love. I believe in the transformative powers of love. I've seen it at work in life. So that I could get a hold of. So when I replaced that part of the psalm with, my knowledge of truth might be love. Love is my shepherd. Love takes care of its sheep. Love will take care of me because I am seeking love through this meditation. If I'm honestly seeking love in whatever it is that I'm thinking, in whatever it is that I'm doing, in however it is that I'm thinking about others, um, then I'm close to my higher power. I'm close to that director. Because if I'm letting my mind run the show, I'm making up the same things that you described, right? I know what people are thinking. I know where they're coming from. I'm on the defensive. I'm trying to run the show, and I'm at battle with everything and everyone kind of constantly. So I love that idea of love being my shepherd, and I'll pass there. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicole. I have one more thought before we move on. So, to me, when I pray this in my mind at night, the Lord is my shepherd, what I think of is a guide, a protector, a teacher, and a loving parent that I always deserved. Would you like to move on if you don't have anything else to add?
Nope, nothing else to add. Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Do you want me to read the next part, or did you want to do that?
No, you go ahead and do that. Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Let's see. I shall not want. I really believe this and I fully accept it so that I'm not going to be afraid of anything. I firmly believe that I shall not want for any good thing. Do you have any comments you wanted to make there?
My thoughts about that section are, well, I wrote down some things that I had recently read in some other Emmett Fox material that came up for me when I read this. Those who attempt to stay close to their higher power or love shall have everything they need, which may not include everything they want. And sometimes I don't know what's best for me. And sometimes I don't know what's best for others. This concept that Emmett Fox writings opened my mind to is something that's in the big book. God is everything or nothing. What's your choice to be? And so that kind of blew my mind, this idea that higher power isn't everything, even things that look bad from my small perspective. And I could look at in my life and I could see where um, bad brought me to good in a lot of times of my life, when I could see that people that I cared about, my children, for example, I had to watch this process where they were hurting themselves, and allow them to hurt themselves so that they could. In the big book, it talks about liquor is the great persuader. Our our misery, our thing that we do that creates misery in our lives is what eventually brings us to a place of wanting a different way of life. So this idea that um, that I don't need to be afraid of anything, that because higher power is in everything. It's mind blowing to me, and that's why I love Emmett Fox. He keeps blowing my mind when I read him. It talks about this spiritual bigness. You know, it, I think too small, and Emmett Fox helps me think bigger about God. And for those of us who have hit a bottom in 12 that are in 12 step rooms have often um, everybody does. Everybody has painful experiences, right? So this idea um, that I don't have to be afraid of anything, that 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 higher power, and it's not, if it's based on this idea, this flimsy read that it's only things that look good from my small perspective. That's a very flimsy read. This idea that higher power is present only when everything looks good. That's not a very well flexed muscle. The things that have flexed my spiritual muscles are the things that look bad from my small perspective, and were out of my control. Both, you know they look bad from my small perspective, and they were out of my control. So I was certainly wanting, this I shall not want. I was certainly wanting, and also thinking that I knew the right way. And then life beat me into a state of reasonableness. I didn't get my way. So I had to learn a new way to think about what was happening. I had to broaden my mind and my perspective about all of it. So, so this idea that I shall not want, that I'll have everything that I need to get through each 24-hour period, one 24-hour period at a time, but it might not include everything I want. But sometimes I don't know what's best for me. And sometimes I don't know what's best for other people. Oftentimes, I could probably just say, I don't. I don't know what's best for other people, you know? So I stopped playing God in that way. And I first accept that in my own life because I've had many experiences where things haven't gone my way. Health, for example, comes up, not gone my way, you know, and that I was still able to, believe for health, for example, that my higher power could use me in that there were ways that I could seek to be helpful and useful and contribute around my health stuff. So I started to look at it from a different perspective. Um, and that's all I got for now. Would you like to offer some comments, Nicole?
Yeah, thanks, Tina. The the part of the big book that came to mind in reference to this I shall not want is that I saw was on page 128, where it says giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle. So, like prior to working the steps, like people were my higher power, and I was constantly wanting from them, wanting to get love, wanting to get belonging, wanting to get approval. And it's like a gas tank that I've drilled a hole in the bottom of, because no matter how much gas, went into the tank, it just kept draining out as fast as I could put it in. And sometimes I would get a little ways in the car, there would be fumes left, so sometimes it would work a little, but eventually, it was never enough. It was never enough getting loved. I would need more, or it wasn't the right kind of love, or they didn't really love me, they didn't really know me, they didn't really understand me, et cetera, et cetera. So then in the process of working the steps, we're given these ideas to shift our thinking from getting to giving. Instead of being in self-obsession, to start thinking, what can I do for, the man or the person who's still suffering today? What can I do and give and bring and contribute to the stream of life today, instead of what am I going to extract out so I can make it to tomorrow? And whenever I find myself in that flow of give, it's like I don't want for anything. I'm not thinking about what I'm missing. I feel whole, I feel complete, I feel that flow of source. And then it's like, whatever problems I have, they're just sort of working themselves out in the background. If I focus for 1 minute on all the stuff that's going wrong, I will just go right down the rabbit hole in my thinking, and turn back to self-obsession. So I find those times when I have to take the steps thoroughly. I have to take steps 10, 11, and 12 thoroughly. And when I do that, I find that I get into that flow, I get into give, and I don't want for anything. Want isn't even a part of the equation at that point. And higher power sort of gets to work in my life. And I'll pass.
Thank you, Nicole. Is it my turn to read?
Yet.
Okay. So he maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Green pastures symbolize an abundance of all good things that I need and perfect all around harmony in my life. They are to be mine permanently and forever, and not merely as a temporary demonstration. That is why I may be said to lie down in them. So this is Tina from Idaho. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. What works for me in the in place of he maketh me is um, doing my two jobs. That's what we learn when we work the 12 steps. Stay close to our higher power and perform his work well. We live in the design for living of steps 10, 11, and 12. So when I do that, when I'm doing my two jobs, those two jobs are really like my shepherd, right? That's what's shepherding me. And as Nicole just previously described, when I'm in those jobs, life works. And it doesn't really matter what's going on. You know, it works. And those are the green pastures, right? They're always accessible to me if I'm doing those two jobs. And I can stay there. It says they are to be mine permanently and forever, not merely as a temporary demonstration. So so that's the truth. I could literally live and give as was just described, and life would be great. But what we learn when we work the 12 steps is we are recovered, we're not cured. So my mind goes back into, like I was describing earlier on, about having a family gathering, and then I'm having a hard time sleeping because I'm back in my mind being my shepherd. It's not a good shepherd, it's a bad shepherd, you know. And then I have to have enough pain when so that I remember the good shepherd. The good shepherd is get back into give and let go of outcomes. I just have to do my two jobs, and that keeps me in green pastures. Nicole, would you like to offer any comments?
Sure. Thanks, Tina. Not a good shepherd. I relate to that. That was great. Um, yeah, I was thinking when I read this part on page 84 in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. Um, and And it makes me think of steps 10, 11, and 12. So, our task is to continue to look for our mistakes because they're going to crop up: selfishness, dishonesty, fear, self-seeking, inconsideration of others. We ask our higher power to remove them. We admit them to someone, our sponsor, immediately. We make amends if we've harmed anyone, and then we turn back to being helpful and useful. And it's like when we're in the process and we're only focusing on our side of the street, because my plate's full. Like when I'm just focusing on my side of the street, there's no more room on my plate for anybody else or what they're doing or what they're not doing. And I find that I'm free. Like I ceased fighting anything or anyone because the fight was never coming from outside to begin with. That's part of my distorted thinking. That's where I get all mixed up, is I think it's an outside in problem instead of an inside out problem. Um, so the idea of green pastures, that relief that comes from looking at our side of the street and then growing towards something new. We have to keep practicing this turn and keep practicing the positive opposite of all of our defects of character. But when that happens, it's like those green pastures. It's not temporary, it's not transient, it's immediate. It's not some green pasture in the far off future. It's like right here and now that relief comes. And I also think about that relief when it comes to getting right sized, which part of, doing the step work is what happens. We start to get right sized to our fellows. So instead of people being our source or the power that we're looking to, or things, um, and using people to try and feel better, now people are in my life and experience, or our lives and experiences, to give and contribute and to love. Like I don't need anything from them. When I can get into that headspace, and then right size to my higher power is directing my life, then I get to lie down, I get to relax, and take it easy. I cease fighting because it was only ever coming from inside to begin with. And I'll pass there.
Thanks. Is it your turn to read?
Oh yeah, thanks. Let's see. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Water in the Bible symbolizes the soul. To lead me beside the still waters means that the power of God has given perfect rest to my soul at this moment. This is the divine peace. When this peace comes to my soul, it must be that my demonstration must come, and that my only task is to bring about this peace. By this meditation, I am practicing the presence of God. That is, I am praying for peace, and I know that this prayer will be answered. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah. And I think what you were just talking about comes up for me. When I am in give, I am at peace. When I'm in get, I'm not. Those, it's as simple as that. It's like turning a faucet from cold to hot, or from hot to cold, or whatever. It's that reliable, it's that predictable. I can count on it, you know, every time. And there's peace in that too. There's peace in knowing that it's a formula that works. It worked for countless alcoholics who found recovery in the 12 steps. So countless people who have gone before. And now, as many years as I am into my own recovery, 15 plus years. I mean, I didn't have the Emmet Fox stuff early on, but since I've had it, I can see this is a reliable law. It's one of those spiritual laws that you can count on, like the law of gravity. If I walk off the roof, I'm going to splat on the ground. Nobody did it to me. I'm not a victim to it. It's just a law. This living in give or living in get is also a spiritual law. When I live in give and I'm not concerned with what other people are doing. I'm just concerned with being a channel of love flowing into the world. Love doesn't always mean pleasing. I'm not necessarily the behavior that the actions that I'm guided to take may not make people happy, but that's really none of my affair. That's none of my business. My only business is what would love have me do? What would higher power have me bring and give? So it's a very reliable law. When I in give to give, that's another little caveat. There's this thing that I got tripped up on in the beginning where I was giving, I thought to give, but when people didn't like it or they didn't appreciate me or they weren't, you know, I wasn't getting the response that I wanted, then I was, you know, back in my restless, irritable, discontented state. And that was great. See, this is another one of those things where it says, this Lord is my shepherd. It's like, I get to learn, I get to get an education in this process. It's all for good, even if it feels bad in the moment. And the good, when I am acting out of giving to get, is that it's going to hurt eventually. Me. It's going to hurt me eventually. It's going to feel icky to me eventually. Either I'm going to be disgruntled because things didn't unfold the way I wanted. But anyway, I'm going to suffer the consequences of living in get. So it just is like again, it's like a shepherd. I don't know, do they still have those little hooks that have the crick on the end where they kind of tap the little animal's bottom a little bit and get it to move over to where they want it to go? That's what this experience is for me. When I'm back and get, I get this little loving little tap, this little nudge of, oops, that's not going to go well, and I get to make a course correction, and sometimes I have to wait a little longer down that road of being back in get, and it hurts a little bit more, and then I get it. The volume will be lovingly turned up as loud as I need it to go. And then I'll get it. Oh, I'm back in wanting to arrange life to suit me instead of trying to be a channel for my higher power, a channel for love. And I pass.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah, let's see. I think when I saw the still waters part of the psalm, it made me think of in the big book, step 11. It talks about, it gives us directions as we go throughout our day. If we become agitated or doubtful, that we pause. We ask our higher power for the next right thought and action, and then we relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. And those are literally directions in the big book. And you know, it's kind of this thought. That's what I think of when I think of still waters, is like relax and take it easy. That I don't have to, it's not God conjuring, right? They don't say God conjuring, they say God consciousness. So that idea that I don't have to invent this thing, I don't have to work to like make it come into being somehow, that my job is to continue to watch for my disease cropping up, turn to give, make that conscious contact with my higher power. And consciousness is something that already exists, that I'm just tapping into, becoming aware of, waking up to. Chuck Chamberlain says, it's like we get a new pair of glasses. It's like it was already there all along. It, just our attitudes or the ways that we were looking at things, we just couldn't see it. So it says on page 55 in the big book, it says, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. So pausing, asking for the next right thought and action, relaxing and taking it easy, and trusting that the right answers will come. That sounds to me like those still waters. And and I can't just trust that something will come. I don't have the ability to slow my brain down to that extent. So again, I need an action to turn to give, to turn and think about others instead. And when I'm doing that, then I start to have experiences. Then higher power gets to work in my life. And then I go, oh, wait a minute, this situation just, aligned itself. This thing just, some unexpected thing or idea came, or an inspired thought or a direction. And I didn't have to work at it. I didn't have to fight for it. I just had to turn the other way. And all of a sudden it showed up, on my doorstep. And it really is miraculous in that way when I take those actions, and I'll pass.
Thanks, Nicole. This is Tina. I have another little comment that you made me think of. Um, yeah, so I've recently, like in the last several years, started doing a morning meditation, like you just described, out of that section of the Big Book. And and one of the things that I do is I just jot down things that I'm not quite sure how to handle in this 24-hour period. And what's really exciting is lately it's kind of like I'm not as much in getting my way as I used to be, and I'm more in that idea that it talks about in the 12 and 12 being an intelligent agent of God's ever expanding creation. What's God's way? I mean, how can I participate in this ever expanding creation? And so I'm starting to be excited about things like this podcast. Like, how can higher power use me in the world for good? Even if it doesn't turn out being for good, I just get excited by the motivation that I want to participate in something that could turn into good. So I do that thing of I jot down things, ideas, that I want to be participating in the creation of something good, ideas I have about what could that possibly be. And then I do what one of my favorite speakers, Sandy Beach, talks about. He would say, I ask God for guidance, and then I go to a movie. And I'm sitting in that movie, and then doodle-doo, up pops a fully formed idea. And I start developing this conscious contact with higher power. When I ask for help and guidance, trust that it's coming, and do the things I do know how to do that 24 hours, and trust that when the next thing is supposed to come to me, it will come to me. And that's all I've got. Do you have any more ideas before we move on?
No, nothing to add.
So, who read the last thing? I get confused.
I can't remember.
Okay.
Let's see. I'd have to go back and see. I don't know. I don't mind reading the next one if you want.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. He restoreth my soul. This is my promise of complete salvation. My prayer is now being answered. The peace of God is filling my soul. All my difficulties have arisen from my soul, having separated herself in belief from her living source. I have thought myself to be separated from God, and therefore, for practical purposes, I was separated. And this has meant for me a load of responsibility, selfishness, fear, and limitation. In other words, the quote, fall of man. This text, however, definitely promises the restoration of my soul to her original divine understanding, and it is a guarantee of freedom. I affirm that this is now true. I claim full salvation from all my difficulties. I claim perfect health, happiness, and prosperity. I am free. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, this is Tina, and my thoughts about that are, this is where pretty much all of us who come to 12-step recovery are. when we get here, we're in misery. We're missing the hell out of God. I think it was Bob Darrell or Sandy Beach that says that. But what we feel like is crap. We just feel like crap. We feel bad about ourselves. We are in a fear. We're in misery. And we basically have life sucks attitude. And as I've come to believe, when I'm in that spot, that's the fall of man. That's that's what we need salvation from, is that missing the hell out of God. When we miss the hell out of God, we could say it this way: miss the hell out of love. I am made to dwell in love. Everyone is made to dwell in love. And the way we experience that is through giving to give. And a lot of us have to get to a pretty big bottom before we're willing to. There's a line in the big book that says, well, it's the promises on page 100. The things that came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands, we could say in love's hands, in our good shepherd's hands, were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. So that is a mind-boggling perspective for us, who all 12 steppers, because all of us were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. And that brought all of us to a bottom, to misery, And so this idea that it's not the outcome that we are really concerned with anymore. That is the way all of our lives have been driven. They've been driven, and we came by it naturally. The whole world is driven by this pursuit of fill in the blank: pursuit of love, pursuit of success, pursuit of thinness, pursuit of, perfect health, pursuit of whatever, fill in the blank, getting people to like us, whatever. We've been in pursuit, hot pursuit of trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. And that has made us miserable. And there's no peace in that. There's absolutely no peace in that, because you can't get enough of what you really don't need, right? We don't really need more stuff. We don't really need people to like us. We don't really need, what we really need is to be reliably connected to a meaningful, purposeful life. That's what we really need. And the reason why we really need that is because that's the way that we feel near to our creator, that we feel near to our higher power, that we feel near to love. There's a line after the fifth step in the big book that says, we used to have something like this, I'm not quoting this right, an idea of God, but now we begin to have an experience of God. So having God or love rattling around in our head isn't going to help us. This idea of God. That's why people can read books up the wazoo about God, right? And it probably, well, maybe it does help some people. It didn't help me, is what I can say. But what started to help me when I had an experience of God. And that worked by getting through the steps fast, getting to step 12, and beginning to carry this message of hope to others who still suffered. That taught me this whole idea of giving to give, caring to care, and loving to love. I learned, it kind of beat me into a state of reasonableness. I still, of course, my wanting my way still showed up with my sponsees. I wanted them to work it faster. I didn't want them to drop off the planet after step 3 or step 5 or step 7 or step 9 or step 12. So I keep learning that getting my way isn't the ticket that I thought it was. I have to learn it over and over and over again. But but what comes with that is this incredible freedom, and that um, I get reliably connected to this act of giving to give, and that's the ticket. That's the um, that's the prize. That's where the prize is found, is in this commitment, not to success, but to giving to give. And the 12th step in sponsoring others is that reliable action that keeps me learning that over and over and over again. Um, and I think I lost track of my thoughts. So hopefully they'll come back to me when I got kind of off the track there. Do you have anything you want to add, Nicole?
Sure. Yeah, this idea of separateness, I think, at one part in the book, it doesn't use this term in regards to separateness. It uses it in regards to self-will. In the Big Book of AA, it was self-will run riot. But when I think of addicts, it's also separateness run riot, as well. Like, separate from our fellows, playing roles, casting everyone as the villain in our stories, assuming we know what other people are thinking or doing, um, or, we're carrying guilt about the harms that we've done, or we're consumed by fear, or we're trying to run the show, and separate from our higher power. Some of us had an apathetic relationship to a higher power. Some of us had an antagonistic relationship to our higher power. Pretty much every story at the end of the big book, somewhere in that story, you're going to read, I felt like I was different. I felt like I didn't belong. And I think that's a very human condition. But for us addicts, I just think, we have that turned up all the way to boil, on the stovetop. So, yeah, I think again, going back to this idea of right sized to our higher power, and how egotistical it is to think that we are the one person, along with some other people on the face of the earth, that a higher power has singled out to suffer. Like, you're the ones that are going to suffer, and over here, all these lives are going to work out great. That's like incredibly egotistical thought. That separateness is always ego, whether we're playing it big or we're playing it small. Um, so yeah, uh, um, I don't know. There's really no way back for me. Like, I can't believe that I'm a part of that higher power of everything until I get into the actions of what was just described, right? 10, 11, and 12, and then turn to be helpful and useful. And then all of a sudden, I have the experience of being a part, not separated from love, a part of love. Love is flowing through me. I've heard it described, that like higher power is this source of energy, like a plug that always has power going to it. um and we're standing there with the cord in our hand going, why is everything so miserable? And then my sponsor will say, okay, are you ready to quit this moment, whatever it is that you're suffering around? Yes. Okay, great. Did you plug in the lamp? And it's always that simple. Like, it's never any more difficult than that, in terms of getting plugged back into that source. It's just the decision. How much suffering am I going to take over here before I finally get reminded, oh yeah, I'm holding the cord. I have been this whole time. And then turning to plug it back in, and that higher power starts flowing again immediately. It's never the source that goes away. It's always, us kind of pulling the plug. And I'll pass.
Thanks, Nicole. That made me think of one more thing, that I claim full salvation from my difficulties. So, um, prior to getting to my bottom, I really thought engaging my difficulties was the way out of my difficulties, thinking harder about my difficulties. And what this is salvation from my difficulties. When I turn to be helpful and useful, I stop even attending to my difficulties. So the alcoholics that wrote the big book, they wanted to quit and couldn't, you know, and I want to quit my insanity. But the solution to quitting my insanity is not focusing on my insanity. And that's what they thought. They thought they were going to think their way out of their drinking problem. And I think I'm going to think my way out of my difficulties. But the truth is that I'm just going to be turning now to helpful and useful. And that's how my higher power can solve my problems. I'm not the problem solver. I just stick my tongue out at those things and walk past it and go and do the work I know that I need to do, which is step 12, 10, 11, and 12, and allow my higher power to do whatever needs to be done with those things that I think are my difficulty. A lot of times they are not even my difficulties. They just fade away completely out of existence. So I think you read the "He restoreth my soul" paragraph, right?
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
gonna. Do you have any other comments before I read the next one?
No, no more comment.
Okay, he leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Righteousness means right thinking. And I know that to think rightly about any condition means healing and safety. All evil is wrong thought. All good is right or true thought. Christ in me, my good shepherd, is now guiding me in the path of right thought. So all will be well. In the Bible, the name of anything is the nature or character of that thing. The nature of God is all powerful, omnipresent, good, boundless love. I know that this boundless love is now taking care of me and arranging my affairs. I don't remember whose turn it is to comment. Is it my turn or your turn? Okay. So I need to practice correct thinking, but mostly I need to take action. I can't think my way out of hell, but I can reliably act my way out of the hell of my own thinking. And that's to turn to steps 10, 11, and 12. But I also need to practice good thinking. And some of the things that Dave and I went over in the Golden Key, the last podcast, is God is wisdom, truth, inconceivable love, present everywhere, has infinite power, knows everything, and so on. It matters not how well you may think you understand these things, go over them repeatedly. I can substitute love is, has infinite power, is present everywhere, knows everything, and so on. I can also insert giving to give, has infinite power, knows everything, and so on. So I just practice believing in good and I live in give. And this path, it calls it the path of righteousness. I'm led to focus on good, to focus on give, to focus on contribute, to focus on love, and to let my higher power solve my perceived problems. And the way that I learn how to do that is I live in steps 10, 11, and 12, especially sponsoring others. These people that I'm not as connected to, I'm able to love in a way that I couldn't love the people that are closest to me because I have less attachment to outcomes, and I'm able to practice this give to give there. And then eventually that starts to um, move into my relationships with my partner, with my children, with my family, with my neighbors, etc. And I pass.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah, this right thinking or righteousness, right thinking idea, I can't rely on my brain to my thinking for right and wrong thinking. Because I look at situations and I say this is the wrong thing that's happening, or they're doing it wrong, or they don't see me the right way, or whatever it is. When I'm in my selfish, self-centered thinking, that right and wrong takes on a whole new meaning, right? Um, in fact, it doesn't even mention wrong in this description of this part of the psalm. It only mentions right thinking because like wrong doesn't exist when we're tapped into that. Um, so when I'm thinking, when I replace those words with love, it's like, is what I'm about to do loving? Is what I'm about to say loving? Am I thinking of others from a place of love? Um, and like was, you mentioned before, it's not always the thing that people are going to like, especially like for the example, sponsoring others. Sometimes the most helpful thing isn't the thing that's going to get me liked. And I have to go 10 rounds with trying to get liked before I go, oh, wait a minute, maybe, what I'm doing isn't really isn't helpful, isn't really what my higher power would have me do. It's what I want to do so that I don't get not liked, or whatever. So is what I'm about to do loving? Am I acting from love? And then also, seeing other people from that lens, part of our character defects and in step 4 and 5 and really continuing through the rest of our lives as we do 10, 11, and 12 is, you know, um, making up what I think other people are thinking about me. Like 50% of my problem goes away when I go, I don't actually know what other people are thinking and I'm making up what they're thinking. And if I disagree with what someone's doing or I don't like what someone's doing, I make it about me. And so looking at them through the lens of love is partly going, oh, wait, they're a suffering human being just like I am. And they probably have this whole list of old ideas, like I have. I'm worthless. I don't belong. I don't matter. And that maybe what they're doing is coming from that, and it doesn't have anything to do with me. And as soon as I can introduce those ideas, which are given to me by this process of working the steps, then all of a sudden I have access to love. I have access to tolerance. I have access to patience, those things that I don't have access to when I'm in my right and wrong brain, my little brain, as I say. And I'll pass there.
Would you read the next one?
Sure. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. I am never again going to be afraid of anything, because thou, my good shepherd, art with me. I know that thou who art all love and hast all power protectest me, and that we are one forever and ever. I know that I can never find myself anywhere, but thou will be there too. I know that because thou art life, there is no death. And I note that the Bible speaks not of death, but of the shadow of death, which is our false belief. There is no death, but the seeming loss of thy presence. Did you have any thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that one quickly are Just because things may look bad, the valley of the shadow of death, like a health thing or estrangement in relationships, I will not believe in bad because God is everything or nothing. Good it is even in things which look bad from my small perspective. So, just had a friend over, and that friend was describing uh, some real difficulties in a relationship that might result in divorce. And my 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 personal experience is that I get to go to God is everything or nothing, even things which look bad from my small perspective. I have kind of a small brain, and I am not going to be able to wrap my brain around how is this going to work for good in everyone's life. But I can practice a belief that all things, and we've all had people die, we've all had, you know, probably illness and things like that. But how can, if I'm going to spend any energy on this, how can I spend energy on it in a way that's going to contribute to the good, you know, of me or somebody else or whatever. So it's really an exercise in growing my um I have a tiny fear-based brain, and I can put that on the bench for today in this game of life, this 24 hours, and choose to believe that um, that everything that higher power can work good in everything, you know. Um, and sometimes, you know, I'm challenged around that, especially when, let's say, an estrangement has happened for a long period of time. And I'm challenged around that idea that that God is in this, that good is in this. And so that's a time when I have to just take a turning action or maybe do a 10th step. We get to do 10th steps in the program of recovery where I go to somebody that I do step work with and say, I'm disturbed because X, Y, and Z. If it sticks around or hangs on to me, that feeling or that perspective that things are bad, I probably need to do a 10 step, which always directs me back to where can I contribute, where can I give, and working with others. So again, it brings us back to the focus of, instead of focusing on the trouble, quote unquote trouble, and I say it in quotes because I can think of all kinds of stuff that I thought was bad that helped people, that worked out for good. People needed to hit a bottom around something or whatever. I can't really trust my small mind, you know, and 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 I can step back into the step work if I'm stuck there. And I pass. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Sure, yes. So, yeah, I think fear comes up for me when I read this. And, I just don't have any way out of fear. And if I use my thinking when I'm afraid, what happened before recovery was it was like a bad episode of I Love Lucy, right? Except not funny, just trying to come up with all kinds of schemes and plans to protect myself from whatever the threat was. And then those schemes and plans kept piling on top of each other, and it was like dominoes that would just fall over. Um, didn't keep me safe in any way. And then I would sort of blame God or the universe or the world for whatever, suffering befell me as a result of this thing that I was afraid of and all these little, self protections that I used and put up. Uh, so now, you know, they use the term in the big book, and I'm not going to get it exactly. But they say fear should be classed with stealing. Like it takes up that much of our time and energy, and and I just don't have any way out through my thinking. So my only solution when I want a solution is to turn. I have to admit the fear. I have to ask my higher power to remove it, and I have to turn immediately to be helpful and useful. I have to get off the subject completely. And then it says in the chapter Into Action, it says, quote, "That was the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We had not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed." So, I used to see my symptoms. I thought my symptoms were my solution. And then I was given this opportunity to look at it from a different point of view, that my symptoms were actually part of my problem. And they were never gonna protect me, these things that I was turning to. So when I turn back to give and let higher power have the problem, then that fear is immediately lifted, it's removed. And if it isn't, I have to keep turning back. I have to keep admitting it. I have to keep turning as many times as it takes until it does. And I'll pass.
This Tina, I just had one more thought about that shadow of death, the valley of the shadow of death. So, with my health, um, I really saw that as the valley of the shadow of death. It's like, um, and I can fall into believing in bad around things, an estrangement. I can fall into believing in bad. That's the valley of the shadow of death, is that believing in bad. So for me, again, I have to do what you just described. I have to turn and focus on where can I be helpful and useful and give to give. And that's usually with doing some step work with some of my sponsees. And I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going to give that fuel. I'm going to turn and give love fuel in my life. And I pass. Do you have any more, or should I move on?
No, I didn't have anything else.
Okay. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I know that thy law cannot err, because thou art divine principle. And I know that my word shall go forth in this meditation, and that it shall not return unto me void, because I am the child and the heir of thy kingdom. So, and so is everybody. That's the great news, is that everybody's on a path, right? Everybody is on a path. And some of us are on the path of hitting a bottom, you know, but it's all good. But for me, what comes up for me, this rod and thy staff, it sounds like discipline to me, the rod and the staff. And so I go back to thinking about spiritual law. I don't get what I want, I get what I am. And if I am living in get, my life sucks reliably. I get an education, it tells me where I'm at. And if I'm living in give, I get an education. My life works. So it's like that's a really good thing to have that rod and that staff. It's comforting because um, if I step a toe back into the pool of git, I'm going to suffer for it, you know? And what I love about that, there's a line in the big book, or the 12 and 12, that says something like that we only had to, I'm paraphrasing, fill the first nip of the ringer. So some of us had to hit a horrible, icky bottom. It took decades to get there. And then after we work the 12 steps and we learn about this rod and thy staff, we learn about when I'm disturbed, I don't have to be big disturbed anymore. I can take the right actions when I'm little disturbed now. That when I feel the first nip of the ringer, when I go, oh, ouch, I don't have to get too excruciating, you know? But if I need to, it'll be there for me as well. So that's what comes up for me.
Yeah,
Cool.
I thought of something exactly what you described. I was thinking of some similar things, that like that idea of spiritual law. Because when I look at rod and staff, I think punishing. I think, a higher power that's going to smack me on the head, and I don't want any part of that. So again, those gates just shut down. But then, you know, applying it to um, where we see that truth within the step work and within our own lives, like spiritual law, that I get what I think I am, I get what I think others are, I get what I think God is. Um, and, an example of that might be, a character defect of mine, for example, is that I'm responsible, it's my fault. So something will happen, and let's say it's something I need to discuss with someone else. Someone else is involved in a decision around this thing. Um, I want to convince the other person that whatever's happening, let's say something broke. I don't want to have the discussion that something broke. I want to have the discussion that it wasn't my fault that this thing happened, that it's not me, that can they also see that it's broke, that it's not just me. I want to have those discussions. I want to have those discussions more than whatever emergency is waiting because of the thing that broke. I want to make sure to have the discussions about it's not me. So yeah, it's like, and then someone might use that and go, well, it's just you. And then I get disturbed. And I'm like, well, where the heck see, everyone blames me or everyone thinks it's me or whatever, but I'm the one that's demonstrating exactly how to have this relationship with me, exactly how to have this transaction. And then I get upset with people about it. So yeah, just looking at, what is it that I'm bringing to the situation, and this idea of spiritual law that I'm seeing reflected back what I'm bringing. And that is very comforting, actually. It's incredibly comforting because now it's not a mystery. Before I was just drowning in a sea of it's all my fault. And now it's like, oh, wait a minute. I actually set this ball rolling or whatever. And I can take steps now to practice something new. And I'll.
Nicole, I got a little bit confused. Did we just do thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Okay. All right. I have one more little comment about that section. So I have one more little comment about that section. So um, I really like what you said, made me think of some other stuff. So yeah, I have an example of I have been behaving in ways that I feel guided by my higher power to behave in the world. And and I know that some people that I care about um don't like that way that I've been behaving. and I invited them over for Thanksgiving, and it was uncomfortable. And um, so then I have thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. My thinking goes as I'm trying to fall asleep to um, kind of a place of poor me, or self pity around that. Um, and that's not a comfortable place for me anymore to spend time. I spent a lot of time there before recovery. But what I realize is that, um, I'm back in Git, which is going to be reliably crappy for me. And that I am actually learning this new thing that, they get to be them, I get to be me, all is well. That just keeps coming up for me. I don't, spiritual law is I don't get what I want, I get what I am. If I'm back in wanting someone's approval, then their lack of approval bothers me. If I'm just being me to contribute, or if I'm just giving to give, then their lack of approval doesn't bother me. But it's like a mirror, this rod in thy staff. As soon as it will, or it's like, a balloon that blows it up big enough for me to be able to see it. Oh, there I am. I'm back. No wonder this showed up. No wonder this showed up. It's in me. This approval thing is in me. This wanting and living in get is in me tonight, instead of what can I contribute to the situation. If I was in what can I contribute, other people wouldn't matter, you know. But sometimes I fall back into that, and I love it that we have this rod and staff. The first nip of the ringer, I get to look at, oh crap, that's what I brought. And it's reliable. I get what I am every time. Wanting approval. They didn't have any. Ouch. Get to look at me. Okay, so should we move on, or do you have something else you want to comment on?
Sure, no, I
I
lost
think
track of
you're
who's
I
reading.
think you're reading Thou
Okay,
Preparest.
let's see. Thou anointest, is that where we are? Yeah, right? No.
I don't
Thou
think so. I think we're on Thou Preparest a table. Or maybe not.
Oh no, you're correct. Sorry. Yep. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. My enemies are my own thoughts, my doubts, my fears, my thoughts of criticism of others and self-condemnation. The only enemies I can have, a man's enemies shall be those of his own household. But these now no longer have any power to hurt me because I am speaking the word of truth, and my good shepherd will bring me a glorious demonstration in the teeth of every difficulty. Yeah. Did you have any thoughts there?
Yes, it's kind of like what I was just saying, actually. And it's so helpful to read these words. My enemies are my own thoughts. What a load off. I mean, how freeing to know that it's my doubts, my fears, my thoughts of criticism and my self-condemnation. Those are my enemies. Um, it's just so freeing. It's really hard to wrap one's mind around, because this is not the way of the world. This kind of staying in one's own skin, that that not, I don't have to even know what other people's thoughts are. As a matter of fact, you know, if I'm trying, I probably need to do a 10th step. If I'm even guessing at what other people's thoughts are, I might be on the verge of needing to do a 10th step. It's none of my business. So getting clear about what my business is, and that's why it's so incredibly simple and helpful in the big book, where we learn that we have two jobs: stay close to our higher power, stay close to our own guidance, and perform higher power or love's work well. Those are my two jobs. It makes my life doable. It makes my life simple. Usually, it actually helps me walk into all kinds of situations which previously would have been difficult and not have difficulties. That's even a possibility now, years into my recovery. And knowing that it's my own thoughts that are the problem is so helpful. And I can turn to doing the right things, to doing a 10th step if I need to working with others. I just do my two jobs and pray for and look for the good. And I pass.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, the hell is always going on inside our own brains, right? It's mine enemies are like our defects of character, and and the relief comes when we just focus on our side of the street. I mean, just for example, all the stuff that we make up about what other people are thinking. Um, someone can say something or do something, and I make it mean they think that I'm worthless. Well, that's incredibly hurtful to sit with, and to think that other people think. But it's me that believes in my worthlessness. I'm looking for it outside of myself. I'm like judge, jury, executioner of the case if I'm worthless, and everybody's here in my courtroom, and no matter what you say or do, I'm going to assign it to that docket. So once I see that I'm just making that stuff up, that other people, aren't thinking about me even 1/100th of the time that I think that they're thinking about me. They're thinking about themselves probably, and they have their own narrative going on of I'm worthless and I don't matter and I don't belong. I'm probably not a thought in their heads. And so, just as an example, it's like that frees me up when I just go, oh, wait a minute. I don't know what other people are thinking. And that thought is coming from me. It's not coming from outside of myself. And instead of spending this moment and this time thinking about what other people are thinking, let me instead turn to how can I care about them? If I already had worth and I didn't need that from outside of myself, just what if that were possible? What might I do? And, the thought has come, why don't I ask them what they're thinking about in this moment, what they're feeling? And I've been completely shocked by the answer that's come that didn't have anything to do with what I thought it had to do with. And I learned something new about that person, and I loved them for what they shared. I just loved knowing them better. So that way out of hell is like immediate right away. The moment that I turn to my own mistakes and then challenge that distorted thinking. And I have this give to turn towards, and I'll pass. Thanks.
Okay, I think it's my turn to read the next one. I think we're on thou anointest my head with oil. In the Bible, oil and ointment are symbols of gladness, praise, and thanksgiving. This line assures me that I am going to be rescued from all my difficulties. Anointing with oil is also a symbol of consecration, and by meditating in this way on the truth, I am do you know how to say that word, Nicole?
I'm gonna mess it up.
Reconsecrated.
Reconsecrated.
We reconsecrated as the perfect child of God. I bless God for his perfect goodness. I thank God for his perfect, unceasing care for me. I praise him for the glory of his name, and I thank him in particular for a perfect and generous demonstration over my present difficulties. So, I'm Tina, and this reminds me. So the thing that I wrote here is I'm on the way to better in all areas of my life. I envision those I love also surrounded by and innervated with love. They are on the way to better too. So, what is this oil? That it's the meditating on this golden key, which is God is wisdom, love, truth, inconceivable love, present everywhere, has infinite power, knows everything, and so on. So a belief for me is that God is good, that God is synonymous with love, that God is, and even it's even so powerful that it's in things that look bad to me. Even things that look bad to me, God is there. I know that to be true because it's been true in my life. You know, there have been things that have been bad. And like I always go back to the health thing. It's like, yeah, would rather it not be true, right? But what's so wonderful is that it isn't my life. I have a full, because of all of this work that we're talking about, I have a full, glorious life. And I get to be helpful and useful. I get to really care about people and love people. I get to know the difference between love, loving to love, and loving to get, giving to give, giving to get. And I get to bring those things. So, and even with my health, I can think about, I can at least do this. I can say, show me how I can be helpful to others who suffer similarly, you know? And I started a Facebook group for people that have the same condition as me. So I can always be asking. And as soon as I make that turn from this is bad to, well, is there a way I might be able to be helpful to others who have a similar situation? You know, it gets me out of self. And what self is, from my perspective, it's that thinking about me. That was what almost killed me when I hit my bottom 14 years ago, was that I was completely obsessed with myself. And I was so focused on my quote unquote problems that I didn't, even think a good life was possible. And fortunately, I'm not God, right? So when I hit that bottom and I just started taking these actions, even when I didn't believe them, even when I didn't believe that God was good, when I just got a sponsor, worked the 12 steps, I got connected to a bigger and bigger and bigger, more love filled life. And all of those things that I thought were insurmountable shrunk somehow. Or maybe it's just that all of the other stuff grew, all of the good grew in my life and started being a bigger part of my picture. So I pass with that.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah, if I had read this prior to working the steps, this idea of gratitude, um, I just couldn't have found it within myself. I didn't feel grateful for my life. I was drowning in self-pity. I just didn't have any other perspective. And they say in the big book, right before we take step 6, it says, "We thank God for the opportunity to know Him it better." And when I took that step, I replaced God with love, and I felt genuinely grateful for the opportunity. And I think that they also say in the big book, this works. It really does. Like if we have this spiritual malady, I was given the very first directions, and in the first directions before I even began my step work, I was told if you start spinning out in your head, if you start getting into self-obsession, self-pity, whatever, to turn immediately and to reach out to someone else and give to give, not to get anything. Don't tell them what you're doing. Don't try to get comfort or love or understanding or anything at all. Just call to care about them and then follow up with them. Whatever they tell you, follow up with them and find out how they're doing. Um, and I was in the middle of intense suffering, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I have these directions, and I did it. And what happened was I felt relief. And I also realized that I don't think I had called my best friend, and I don't think I'd ever made that phone call before, because there was silence on the other end of the phone when she said, "Oh, how are you?" and whatever in the course of the conversation. And I said, "I really just called to check on you." There was silence, because that just never happened. So, and I did feel this relief, and I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense as to why. And for the first couple of steps, I was kind of battling the idea. It was like, to use an analogy, it's like my arm's cut off and I'm bleeding to death. And someone says, okay, great. Here's the solution. Go over in this corner and build a table. Like it made that much sense to my brain. Why would that's not addressing my problem? Um, but what happened was when I built the table, effectively took those directions, I felt better. I felt relief. And I thought, what does it matter how I get there? If the point is to feel better, I feel better. Um, so this is kind of, I'm taking a roundabout way to say that when I took each of the steps and continue to take the steps, and I find that it works, I am so grateful because before I didn't have a solution. I just had the same insanity that I was returning to over and over and over again. And I think that this idea of gratitude comes without any effort. You know, when we get a hold of something that works, gratitude is the first thing that shows up in the door. And I'll pass there. Did you want me to read the next
Yeah,
one?
yes. Would you read that next one? Thank
Sure. My cup runneth over. This is an additional assurance of the thoroughness and fullness of my demonstration, not simply that God will rescue me from my difficulties, but that I'm going to receive a clear, full, and all satisfying solution to my problem, and of the unseen causes underlying it, so that it will disappear forever out of my life. When my good shepherd replenishes my cup, it is not merely filled, it runs over. I'll pass to you.
So what I wrote here is higher power is not stingy. Look for the good every day and you will find it. So when I was talking about my health situation, this one particularly stands out to me because I have found a solution to my health problem. Unfortunately, it takes a long effing time, you know? And so but it's a solution. And but the great thing is that it's it's a solution like I have with my spiritual malady, which is I'm not going to be, what do we say? We're not cured, we're recovered, right? So I'm not going to not have that health condition ever, but I've got a a reliable path that where I'm getting gradually better. And it's the same in my spiritual life. I have, I'm not cured of my spiritual malady, but if I live in these 12 steps and live in steps 10, 11, and 12, I am recovered. But I can go back to my misery anytime I want to pick it back up. It'll be there waiting for me. So, and I also just want to say that my cup runneth over. I mean, so many things in my life have, I mean, I was in debilitating, crippling anxiety 14 years ago. Didn't want to live. I wasn't planning a way to end my life, but I didn't want to live. And my cup runneth over. I mean, this has come true in my life. You know, this statement, I've got this full, meaningful, purposeful life where I get to seek to be helpful and useful to others. And I have gotten to know some of my fellows very, very well, whom I consider to be family. And so I just really like that statement. My cup runneth over. And I pass.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah, just kind of similar. It's like, and I like where it says here that the thoroughness and fullness of my demonstration. So like that's our part is to perform higher powers work well and to stay close to our higher power. And living in get, again, it's like that analogy I used before. It's like the gas tank with a hole cut out of the bottom. It never fills up. And when we get into give, it's like we just there's no want for anything, and it's better than anything we could have planned. Like there that idea of living in give, it's already full. So every other little bit of give that we add on top of that runs over. So yeah, and that happens, these promises in the description of this part of the psalm happen when we are thorough, honest, and full in our demonstration, in the actions that we take. Like I can't find my way to a cup runneth over with my thinking. I have to take action, and then I experience these promises. And I'll pass. Let's see. You want me to do the next one? I can't remember who read last.
I think I read the cup runneth over one, right?
Okay, great.
Or not?
I don't
I don't
remember. I
remember.
don't
Okay,
remember.
I'm going to read the next one. I think we're on surely goodness and mercy, are we?
Yeah,
Okay,
great.
I'll read that. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, because I know that every good prayer should finish with thanksgiving and a declaration of faith. I now give thank thee thanks, infinite divine love, for the accomplished fact, and I praise thy glorious unbounded perfection, for the flawless harmony and peace and triumph that shall be surely be mine. I affirm this triumph. I claim it I appropriate it. It is mine. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Sure, I think the thought that came to mind is like it's really in what's been described so far. It's like what are we giving our belief to? Um, and and that's really the shift. It's not an inside, it's not an outside in problem. It's when I believe in lack, when I believe other people or things are my higher power, I'm back in suffering. When I believe that there's a higher power working for the greatest good, when I'm seeking harmony and love in every interaction, when I'm looking to give and contribute, and what does my higher power want for me in this moment, in this next 24 hours, then I'm hooked right back up into love. Yeah, I think that's the I claim it, I appropriate it. Um, you know, we we had a lack of power. That was our problem. So I still don't have the power, but I can assign belief. Um, and and neither of these things are, how am I trying to say this? Like any less true. If I give my belief to lack, that's what shows up. If I give my belief to love, that's what shows up. And I'll pass.
That's great. I do not have anything to add. Perfect. So, do you want to read that last one?
Sure. I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I thank God that I now know indeed that the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall never want any good thing. I know it and realize it. My soul is rooted and grounded in truth. Thy presence is with me and it gives me rest. Now no fear or doubt can by any means creep in. I am thy child, the son of thy house, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens, and that in that house I dwell with thee forever and ever. I'll pass to you for comment.
So, what comes up for me around that is the promises again in the big book after we work all 12 steps. Um, the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands, I could say in love's hands, are better than anything I could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. And that has been true for me. That it doesn't really matter what's going on the outside. If I stay close to my higher power, and my higher power I call love for the most part, and perform love's work well, then I get to live this reality. And then I have this wonderful feedback mechanism built into the whole thing. If I have to go tiptoeing back into get, I'm going to have this nip of the ringer. And I love it that it's not um, ever meant to hurt. It's a loving shepherd, just like this, you know, the shepherd, this loving shepherd that just gently taps me with their crook or whatever that thing's called to get me back over on the path. It's just a built in when when I am wandering away, I suffer. I feel the pain. When I'm back in get, it, there's a consequence, a glorious consequence that, nips me on the heels and says, you sure about that? And I get to make a different decision at any point, or I get to collect more pain. It's a very loving, it's kind of the way that I think a good parent loves their children. You don't tell them what to do, you show them the way and let them find their way. And love is the way, and giving to give is the way. And when I live that way, my life is great, no matter what my present circumstances. And I pass to you.
Yeah, I think what came to mind here was the relief that comes when, I was filled with anxiety as well prior to working the steps. And I remember having this thought of, oh, maybe that's not my job. And then this relief like washed over me, like maybe this was never a job I was meant to have. Like, I've been in God's job or higher power's job or, instead of sticking to my jobs. And and that anxiety lifts when I think that that there's something else, something bigger than me that's guiding my life. I just have to show up in this 24 hours in love and in give and let my higher power work out the rest and the relief that comes. And I think on page 63, I wrote a note here on this one that next we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God or love was going to be our Father and we are His children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of a new and triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. And I'll pass.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Nicole. So our next podcast will be on Emmett Fox's Yoga of Love. Please join us. See
Can't
ya.
wait. Thanks, Tina.
Bye.
Bye.